Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this month's One Step Workshop where we're looking at how to start a podcast. So I know this is a topic that came up with many of you. It's something that a lot of my clients are considering at the moment at various stages of their business. And again, here in the One Step Outside Facebook group, I know a lot of you have had questions around this. So excited to see lots of you live. I've had lots of questions come in ahead of the session, and I'm hoping to have lots more this evening as well. So do say hello when you come on. If you are watching live, I know a lot of you do watch the replays as well. So a massive hello and welcome, whether you are watching live or watching the replay later on. Of course, we'll be sure to share this as usual in the group, as well as perhaps you're watching later on YouTube. It is the end of September at the moment, but I'm sure we'll keep this live for longer, and it's quite an important topic that I think many of you will come back to. If it's not the right time for you right now to start a podcast, certainly it might be later on. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to come on, but do say hello when you pop on. Of course, first of all, to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me yet, I look forward to getting to know you. My name is Anna Lundberg. I'm the founder of One Step Outside, author of Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, and host of the Reimagining Success podcast, which of course is very relevant. And I have my podcasting microphone here, but my less impressive earphones here for right now this evening. Facebook has been making some changes. I'm hoping this is all working. It's a new way of going live. Hopefully you've been notified in the event, and I look forward to seeing you. Carter, great to see you. I know you had some questions around podcasting, so looking forward to hearing more about that. If you do, and hello Valentina, great to see you as well. So if you do have want to share already, as we're just kind of introducing, I guess, why you're here, where are you in the process? Do you already have a concrete idea? Is it something that you've just been thinking about a little bit? Have you already started perhaps, but you just want to get a bit more information? Who knows? So I'd love to hear where you are in the process. Share as much as you'd like, or as little as you'd like around the topic and so on. And maybe we can help each other out as well in the comments. But that obviously helps me to be much more tailored in terms of the support I can give you, knowing what you're going to be talking about and where you are in the process. So do say hello, let me know why you're here and what you're hoping to learn in terms of how to start your own podcast. So I'm excited about this topic. I think it's something that usually, I guess, I don't talk about so much, partly because I don't see myself as some massive guru. Sandra, great to see you. I know you said this was perfect timing for you, so excited that you're here. Good to see you back in the group. I haven't been podcasting for 10 years. I don't have millions and millions of listeners and so on. But I think hopefully that's all the more accessible, I guess, for you. And I can hold my hand up and say I'm by no means a tech guru. I'm not a massive influencer. I'm not a celebrity podcaster. And yet the podcast has been a really important part of my business. So just like my Facebook group doesn't have millions and millions of members, and my book doesn't have bestseller status on Amazon, I'm still able to use these different tools, these different channels in my business, and enjoy myself while I'm doing it. So hopefully that's inspiring to those of you who are just starting out as well. But as I said, do say hello. Let me know why you're in the process. Interesting. Hi, Elena. Great to see you as well. Valentina's saying she's got an idea on a partner, which is interesting. That's something we can definitely look at. Should you do it yourself, a solo podcast? Should you partner with someone else, and so on? But everybody, if you could share a little bit more about where you are in the process, what kind of ideas you have, and then, of course, any questions, and I'll cover those as we go. However, where I wanted to start actually, and I was just Googling some stats just before coming on here, so I'm going to look at my article here because, of course, the first question is, and I'm interested to hear this from you, but why is podcasting such a big thing? We're all suddenly talking about podcasting. I think those who are lucky enough to start many years ago have been early adopters, and they've been able to build those big celebrity brands, and I'm sure monetize those and so on. We can talk about monetization as well. Some of us are a bit late to the party. I launched mine in December 2018, but that's already 2 years ago. In a couple of weeks, we're coming up to 100 episodes. I've been doing that weekly. So, without really noticing, it's built into quite a consistent, ongoing thing. So that's great. But of course, it's really growing. And I've seen various numbers of how many podcasts there are out there, which is both the good and the bad thing, because I guess it's quite a saturated market. Apparently, there's over 1 million now. There's over 30 million episodes I've got here. The good news, by the way, is, and I'm already giving away the biggest insight, which is always or often the same when it comes to business. Most people give up pretty soon. So they might do a few episodes and then, oh, I'm busy and I don't do it consistently. And then they drop off. So if you continue beyond that initial hurdle, you're already winning. You're already in the top X% of podcasts. So consistency, continuing to show up, knowing it's for the long haul is always going to be really powerful. These are US stats, but over 50% of homes, 50% of people over 12 are listening to podcasts. So that's positive. And then internationally, I found, I'm just scrolling down here, actually the top countries, interestingly, South Korea is way ahead of the game. Spain, Sweden, Australia, US is number 5 in terms of podcast listeners. Italy, Canada, France, Japan, Germany, UK, a little bit further behind. So of course it depends where you're operating. But it's certainly a growing industry. And if you think about your own behavior, I'm a massive consumer of podcasts. And that's also one of the main reasons why I started doing my own, because I realized it's such a powerful medium. It's convenient, it's on the go. We can listen on the commute if we have a commute after COVID and so on. And we can listen while we're doing the dishes. We can really quickly listen to a 15-minute episode. I quite like to listen to podcasts that make me fall asleep. That's a slightly different purpose of a podcast. There are some that are 2-3 hours. There are the interviews that are really interesting. There's some fun social banter. There's the storytelling ones, the book-based ones, business, more how-to, and so on, right? So there's so many podcasts. I'm subscribed to, I don't know how many on my phone. And obviously the smartphone is one of the main reasons why podcasting is such a growing industry. And we have it in our pocket. It's so convenient. It's so such a good medium now. And audio in general, if you think of smart speakers as well, it's such a growing medium. Video, of course, is very powerful, but audio is massive. So obviously you guys agree with me because you're here. But again, keep those things coming. A couple of you have shared where you are in the process. Looks like several of you have ideas already. Sandra's already started, so that's great to hear your insight, Sandra, and you can build also on the things I'm saying today in terms of how to get started. But really great to see where you are, and we'll build on that throughout the evening. And again, make sure you ask me any questions. But the first thing, and I promise that I will get to this, but the first thing I wanted to say is almost all the questions that came into me and that come into me are always about tech. And I completely understand that. People want to know, what are the tools I should use? What's the microphone? How do you upload? How do you edit? What's the software? How much does it cost? And so on. And while those are questions that do need to be answered, I would suggest that we're starting at the wrong end. We're starting at the detail of the how, the logistics. Yes, of course, the tools are important. And when we're starting out, it can be quite overwhelming. But there are so many other things we should be looking at before that. So I do promise I will tell you all the tools. I'll answer any questions insofar as I can. I'll tell you what I use and what I know about best practices. However, I would encourage you to take a step back from the technology, from the tools, from the software, and start with some more fundamental questions. And the first question is, should you launch a podcast? That's a big question to ask yourself. So the focus this evening, I should say, is launching a podcast, starting a podcast is actually going to drive your business. So if you want to do it for fun, if you just want to do it as a channel, you want to chat to your friend, you've got this passion, you kind of just want to do it and see where it takes you, by all means, start. However, I would say it still does take time, some money, and resources and tools and so on. You still do want to show up consistently and so on. So I'd still probe whether it really is the right thing for you to do. Nonetheless, this evening, we're looking at not just any old podcast, but a podcast that's actually going to be part of your business ecosystem that's going to ultimately drive credibility, potentially be something you can monetize, drive leads, drive sales, and so on, right? So that's what we're looking at this evening. So I did a session, I think possibly last year, many months ago, around how to publish a book that drives your business. And this is the same thing. If you want to write a book for fun, by all means, but if you really want to write a book that's going to build your brand, your credibility, authority, provide a platform for a public speaking career, for example, that's then a different focus. So again, just to set the scene for tonight, we are looking at really a podcast that will play a role in your business. And in terms of should you start it or not, I'm in two minds about this because most people I speak to, including my business coach at the time when I started my podcast, say, oh, I really wish I'd started earlier. It takes a long time. This is a long game, right? This is not something that's going to bring you results in the first few days or weeks. It takes a long time to build that audience, to refine your message, to build that platform. And it's not, to be honest, the first priority. That's why I haven't talked about it before. There are so many other things we need to do when we're starting a business, when we want to build our audience and drive more or less immediate sales, which I know is always the goal that we have. We want to quickly get the income so we can pay our bills, quit our job, whatever it is. And the reality is it does take a very long time. So generally, yes, we wish we'd started earlier. However, early on, there are so many other priorities. So if you are right at the beginning, if you really feel you have the time and energy, if you're okay with this being one piece that's going to build over time while you also do all the other things that are more important, more urgent to get your business up and running, that's great, because then you'll have this. By the time your business is a bit more consolidated and running, you'll already have quite a few episodes under your belt. However, if you're, let's say, already in a full-time job, you have barely any time to do anything, and if your priority really is to build a viable business, I would question if launching a podcast right now is the thing you want to do. Again, if it's something you just want to do as a fun, creative outlet with a friend, you just want to have something that's a bit more sort of meaningful to you, that gives you that outlet, then by all means. But if your priority is to get a business up and running, it might not be the first priority that you should think about. So really, again, we're talking about a podcast as part of your broader ecosystem. So that means, as I said, building your credibility and authority, demonstrating to people that you have a point of view, you have an opinion, you have expertise, demonstrating your credibility, having content that you can then point to if you want to speak. They can see, oh, she's done 100 episodes, I can listen, possibly even watch the video if you do video for the podcast, but that's certainly not necessary. And also, importantly, drive traffic to your other channels, right? So you can tell people on the podcast to join your Facebook group, or to sign up to your email, or to buy your book, which I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks, because next week is the anniversary of my book publication, right? So you can use the podcast to drive traffic to other channels. The other thing to say is that a podcast in itself, your own podcast, is not going to by itself build an audience, right? In theory, if I just do my podcast over here in my room and I sit here, and Elena's just voiced that fear, if I just sit here recording podcasts, nobody listens to it, it's not doing much good. So in the beginning, when we're starting a business, we want to be externally focused. We want to be out there talking on other people's podcasts is going to be much more effective. And, being external, being active in Facebook groups, or commenting, engaging on LinkedIn, or running even Facebook ads, or speaking, or whatever it is, right? So again, building an audience, actually, your own podcast in the short term, at least, isn't going to build your audience. It's other things, potentially guesting on other people's podcasts. So if you haven't yet launched your podcast, I would ask you a few questions to think about whether to do it now or not, right? And a few things you should do before. I would recommend, as I said, considering guesting on other people's podcasts. Now, you might be intimidated by this. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this idea. But you can start with small podcasts. I found so many podcasts that, have done maybe just a few episodes. They're looking for guests. They're so grateful to have people on. You can practice. You can hone your message. You can build relationships with people who may well become really big, successful business owners and influencers in the future without too much pressure early on. As you build your confidence, you can go to sort of mid-sized podcasts. You can certainly have a dream list of podcasts you want to be on. But there are lots of Facebook groups that I was, and I'll mention several and I can link to more. There's one called She Podcast, which is for women. They did a post every Tuesday, I think it was. And I used to always check it every Tuesday. And you could say, hey, I'm Anna, I'm looking for podcasts to guest on these topics. And people would always say, I'd also say, Sandra, hello, I'm looking for mum guests to talk about XYZ, right? So that kind of exchange. There are always opportunities to guest on other people's podcasts. You can also contact them out of the blue. cold calling, as it were, but then you really want to be clear on, look, I've listened to your podcast, and you really have to have listened to them. I love your message. I really think I can add value to your podcast. And by the way, make sure that they do bring guests on, because my podcast is a solo podcast. So when people ask to come on my podcast, clearly they haven't even checked really what the podcast is. So get on other people's podcasts, listen to other people's podcasts, right? Get a feel for, and especially in your category, in your field, what are other people doing? What do you like about what they're doing? What don't you like about what they're doing? Get a feel for, I had someone asking before, should I do series or seasons? Should it be solo or joint? Should I have this, that, and the other? Work out, what it is you enjoy. And that's really important too. So have a think about, what you like and dislike about other people's. And then, as I said, join podcasting groups. I'm a member of several Facebook groups. I'm now commenting and answering other people's questions, but I also learn from others. I have recently, as of next week, fingers crossed, I'm doing video podcasts. So I've now had to work out the tech of how to sync my video, turn off the audio from that, sync it with the very beautifully edited audio that I have from the podcast, and so on. But that's an interesting outlet, because I'll be putting that on YouTube, and we'll see if that helps with search, etc., etc. But not to worry about that now. But again, being active in these Facebook groups can be really helpful. So I'll just see a little bit the comments that have come in. Okay, so Valentina's saying it's a little step towards your business idea. What if it's just to build a reputation, having a creative outlet? Yes, exactly. So Valentina, I'm glad you said so. Yes, I'm talking about it being part of your business ecosystem. That doesn't mean that you have to have the completely fully fledged business structure and funnels and all sorts of things, right? I often share how I laid things on in my business. And I started with a blog, because I'm a writer by nature, probably added a newsletter, Facebook page, then a Facebook group, then a monthly live in my group, then a weekly live. Now I've gone back to monthly live again. I did some webinars and so on. And then ultimately, and my book, and then the podcast. So, I've layered that on. There's no real order in which you have to do it. So from a business standpoint, again, building your reputation and credibility, beginning to steer the ship of your personal brand in a new direction, absolutely, a podcast would be a great platform for you to do that. Again, assuming you have the energy, assuming that you're not super sort of putting a lot of pressure on this podcast to right away bring you income and a business, because that's not going to happen. And also, as you said, for that creative outlet, maybe even use it as a stepping stone to refine your message. Now, I want to share an example of a colleague I have who's launched a nature podcast with a friend of hers. She does coaching, a particular type of life coaching, and the nature podcast isn't strictly speaking based on that business that she already has, but it's a direction in which she wants to take her coaching, in fact. So what she's doing cleverly is having that creative outlet, enjoying something that she loves and she's passionate about, knowing that in the future, that is where she wants to take her business. So in a slightly more down-to-earth sort of comparison, I guess, for me, I had the book Leaving the Corporate 9-to-5, very much known for sort of escape your job, quit your job, start a business. But I wanted to move more in the broader idea of this rethinking your priorities, work-life integration, not just quitting your job, but realigning your priorities, reimagining success in your life and career. And so my podcast is called Reimagining Success. And for me, exactly as you said, Valentine, I wanted to, proactively steer the conversation, steer my credibility and messaging in a new direction. So absolutely, it can be a great platform to refine your message, to take it forwards. Elena's also mentioning, interviewing women from different countries and different backgrounds. Again, interviewing people is such a great way to build relationships, connections. They may become clients of yours. You may become clients of them. They may have opportunities for you. In any case, it's probably my favorite thing about running my own business, let alone having a podcast, is talking to people all around the world who I never would have spoken to before. Now, again, my podcast is solo because I wanted it to be easy for me to record. I didn't have to schedule lots of meetings and worry about the audio of two people and so on. But I also have the interview series that I already do on my blog, the Fearless Friday series. So I felt like I have that outlet already. Now this is more for me to establish my credibility, authority, and it's very much a piece of my content calendar. So I have certain themes each week. Now the podcast is really the main channel where I have the main sort of topic, and then that then becomes a transcribed blog post, it becomes social media posts, and so on. So absolutely. But speaking with other people, and Sandra's started already to record a podcast with a friend about a particular topic, and that's another great way to do it, right? So you take the pressure off talking yourself. Podcast with a couple of people, if the chemistry is right, can be fantastic. Perfect. Yeah, mistakes to avoid. We'll definitely talk about that. Oh, scripting versus talking. That's a great one, Valentina. So do remind me about that one. We'll get into that one a little bit further along. But again, before you decide, try to experiment, try to go on other people's podcasts, see if you enjoy the medium, try to record just a few episodes and see. If you're thinking of doing it with a friend, a colleague, then by all means, have a recording session just to practice and see if you guys get on, if the chemistry is there, get some feedback from people, join some groups, learn a bit more, just get a bit comfortable with it, I think is a really good place to start. Because again, the reality is, and I do not want to put you off, but as you have anticipated, it does take time to first get on board and understand and the tools and whatever. But then, to be honest, the biggest thing again is consistency, ongoing, to keep releasing these episodes. So you need to make sure that you can commit to doing this. Ideally, then you know who you're talking to, what are you going to be talking about, and you have a routine, a habit for really, scheduling the planning, the recording, editing, publishing, and so on. So again, by no means to put you off, but just recognize that this is a big undertaking. It's for the long term. Whether you're steering the ship of your credibility in a new direction or you're wanting business results, you're not going to see an impact tomorrow. So that's just something to bear in mind. So that's the first question. Should you start a podcast? And those are some questions you can ask. Now, how to get started. Again, I'm not going to talk about tools yet, but again, those of you who have already started, you can let me know how you got started. For me, of course, it has to be, first of all, defining success for you. So again, thinking about why do you want to start the podcast, and also what is your strategy. Ideally, if it's a part of your business, you have the business strategy in mind, so you know who your audience is. In my case, it was experienced corporate professionals and also sort of early stage, growing more to mid-stage entrepreneurs, business owners, freelancers, and so on. Now, I never really articulated that. My intro doesn't say, hey, this is for XYZ. I've kept it relatively open. But as I go, I do make sure I have episodes for those different audiences that I have in mind. So knowing who you're doing it for. Again, what's the primary objective? Is it just to allow yourself to have that creative outlet? Is it to start to steer that ship, as I keep saying, in a new direction, in which case you want to be clear on where you're heading so you can really talk about those themes, interview the right kind of people, and so on? Is it because you want to be a speaker, perhaps, and you want to demonstrate how clearly you can articulate your thoughts and have that platform? Is it about interviewing people all around the world? And I promise I'll get to that, Elena. Remind me again if I don't, but it's a bit further down the funnel of the process. But really thinking about the strategy of who you're talking to, what's your objective? Again, how long is an episode going to be, right? So think about your audience. For me, I'm talking to busy professionals juggling children alongside, or busy entrepreneurs with children, people who are side hustling alongside their business, maybe on a commute, again, pre-COVID days, post-COVID. And so for me, sort of, I always thought 15, 20 minutes is perfect. I quite like that length. Now, I've seen some podcasts that are, 5 minutes. That works for some people, and it's bite-size. In fact, when I was pregnant last year, I listened to a pregnancy podcast that did a 5-minute episodes for every week of the pregnancy, which was ideal because I could either listen to them all back to back, or I could each week just tune in, hey, this is what's happening. And that was quite nice. It was a very specific focus. I came back to that, right? So that could be one way. There are also the ones that are really long. If it's a very philosophical, requires lots of discussion and so on, there are some very successful, very long podcasts. But again, that's giving yourself a very hard time in terms of the length. But think about your audience and think about how long you can speak. As it turns out, I can speak for a long time, just freely babbling on. And of course, if you're interviewing someone, or if you're having that two-way conversation, that might require a bit more time. How often are you going to release? Generally once a week is great. There are, again, this question of seasons comes up. So some podcasts that I follow would have a season of 8 episodes, and then they take a break and they come back in another 8. If you're a very successful podcast, famous, or if you're promoting that can work quite well, because, hey, I love this podcast so much, I'll keep looking for it, and maybe they'll promote it to me again when they come back after a break. That's great. Arguably, I would not worry, but I would suggest that perhaps people then get out of the routine of listening to you. But again, think about your client, right? Maybe you're podcasting to parents, and parents are going to be off the summer and they're not going to have time to listen to your podcast. You want to be off over the summer holidays. By all means, take a break over the summer and come back with sort of a back to school boom in September. So, think about, again, your client, but also importantly, what it looks like for you. And then themes, the kind of themes you want to be talking about. So for me, I have my 5 pillars that I talk about, my 5 content pillars. I have, which you probably don't notice, but I have quite sort of a structured flow throughout the year where I talk about things for a couple of months. Each week there's a new topic. Next week, we're shifting into leaving the corporate 9 to 5. The last couple of weeks, couple of months, in fact, it's been work-life integration. Then we'll move into reimagining success. So, in my mind and in my strategy, it's very clearly structured. I know exactly kind of the topics I'll be talking about. So really try to have the strategy, again, of who's the audience, what's the main objective, what are the topics, how often, how long, and so on. So let me know. I'm going to keep barraging through, if that's a word, but keep asking me questions on each of the things I'm saying to make sure it makes sense. So does that make sense in terms of thinking about the strategy, thinking about what works for you, what works for the audience, what's the objective, what are you trying to get to before you get into the nitty-gritty? Now, in terms of actually beginning to design it, right, before you even start recording and putting stuff out there, you want to think about a title. If you think, let's say Apple Podcasts, one of the biggest podcasting apps and platforms, you'll see, and again, you can look at some other podcasts, you can see they've got a title and they've got a description, a short description with a certain number of characters. Then, of course, each episode has, again, a title, a description. You can put possibly show notes, possibly some links in there. So have a look at what other people are doing in your space. What kind of structure do you think you want to have? Are you going to have something that's really search optimized? Look at what the other podcasts are called in your category. You want to sort of fit in, but you also want to stand out. Then you've got the graphic as well. My top tip for graphics for podcasts, just like it is for book covers actually, is to mock up. Again, on your phone, I might pull it up here on the app, you know what it looks like in terms of the screen. If you think of, if I go into a particular category, and I'll see if I can, browsing, you can see obviously, I don't know if that shows up on that. It actually doesn't show up very well, but you know what it looks like. You can see here banners, the trending ones. The thumbnails are very small. So you need to, if you shrink it down very small, you need to make sure that it's still bright colors. Faces are great. So if you can have your face on there, even if you're not a celebrity, it really, eye contact is always good, full frontal of your face. Make sure, that all the text is legible as well. So search optimization, I wouldn't get too keyword crazy in terms of the title, but the title should be very straightforward, I think. Reimagining is a bit of a flowery word, but success, hopefully, if someone searches success, that should come up. So think about that in terms of title. Don't be too clever, because if you want people to search for you when they're looking for your topic, you probably want, if it's about nature, maybe you want nature in there, maybe you want mums in there, if it's about moms, keep it straightforward. The next thing you can do is categories. So mine, I believe, is in career, it's in business, entrepreneurship, whatever. So really look at the categories you want to be in, so you come up there. And then you have the description, and they do block, these days, these channels are pretty, media giants are pretty savvy to keyword optimization, sort of spamming, but make sure again in the description that you're thinking of, some people do list, these are the topics I cover, entrepreneurship, branding, etc. You could try that. Something else which is not so much search optimization, but getting ratings and reviews will help you score higher and come up in the rankings, so that's something to consider, to really encourage ratings and reviews as well. But again, in terms of designing, write down the elements you need to do. You need your title, you need your description for the overall podcast, you need your graphic. Usually there's a square thumbnail version, and then there's a sort of YouTube version. You can actually, and we'll talk about publishing tools in a moment, you can publish automatically to YouTube just the audio. I've tried that for a few weeks. Don't get a huge amount of traffic, as you can imagine. It's just a static picture and then you're listening. That's why I'm now trying the video as well. And then for each episode, you also want to think about, if you're interviewing, maybe you need different artwork for each interview episode. For example, if I was interviewing Sandra on my podcast, I'd want a podcast episode graphic that says, hey, bringing on Sandra to speak about XYZ expert topic. So think about that as well. And then, and again, keep your questions coming, preparing your first episode. So again, in fact, the recommendation generally is to have at least 3 episodes ready to go when you launch, because if I find Sandra's podcast around parenting across 2 generations of mums, wow, I love this, she's only got 1 episode, then you kind of lose me quite quickly. Whereas if you've got a few I can listen to, oh yeah, I love this one too, yeah, that's interesting, then I'll subscribe and hopefully stick with you, right? So have a few already ready to go. You might consider a trailer. I did an episode 0, which was sort of an introduction. Please don't listen to it. I'm pretty sure it's quite bad. I'd like to go back and change it. But, have a think about, okay, I'll have sort of a trailer / intro. Hey, this is why I'm talking about reimagining success. This is my background, Anna Lundberg, and here's what you can expect from the show. And then topic 1, why redefine success? Topic 2, how redefine success? Topic 3, etc. right? So just think of those first few episodes and get those recorded first. And then again, for each one, you need the title, you need a description, you need potentially artwork. My artwork is the same. For social media, I add the title of the episode, but generally it's the same sort of thumbnail. And again, thinking for each episode, right, the structure of it. Now we're getting into details now, but I know you guys want all the nitty gritty. So if you think of an episode structure, that's something else to think about, right? So there's an introduction, and so that's an intro, and there's usually an outro. So the introduction, some people, and I want to say some Americans in particular, have, pay someone else to speak. And, I could do one for you, you could do one for me, or you could pay a professional to go, welcome to Anna Lundberg's podcast about reimagining success. And that could maybe come across as professional and very, impactful. And wow, she has someone talking about how amazing Anna Lundberg is. My preference is to do my own. And I think for most of what you guys are trying to achieve, you're wanting to build your personal brand, I would recommend that you say, hey, welcome to, Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. I can't remember what I say in my intro. And again, probably I'd like to redo it at some point. But, this is what we're talking about for this kind of audience, and let's get started kind of thing. There are lots of articles which will keep it under 30 seconds, whatever the recommendation is. I also, before that, have a little Reimagining Success episode 1, which I saw someone do. So my structure is Reimagining Success episode 1, intro, episode, and then an outro. For the outro, I have created a number of them over the years. They could be promoting the website, join the Facebook group, book a call, download this lead magnet or something, a tool, subscribe, do a rating and review, buy the book, join the program. It could be anything, right? And again, not to overwhelm you, just start with something. And it could be just you sort of saying, hey, don't forget to, if you like the episode, then, subscribe so that you never miss it. Or, hey, did you like this? Then share with a friend. Or contact me on this email. I'd love your feedback as I'm just getting started, right? So always think of a call to action at the end. And then in terms of that intro and outro, there's music under them usually. So I got music, and I want to say now I need to double check, but I think it was on Shutterstock. Shutterstock, you can get, of course, stock images. And I also got very cheaply, a song which, to be honest, I haven't tired of it. It's nothing special, but it kind of works. I think it had kind of the optimistic, positive feel that I wanted, and I quite like it. It works sort of, there's a drum beat at the beginning that works, that fades out, and then I talk as well. So that's a little bit about the structure as well. So we'll pause there. I'll grab some water while I ask if there are any questions up to there. And don't worry, we're about to get into the tools in just a minute. So let me know any questions there as well. But so far, just to recap, first of all, are you sure you want to start a podcast? Is this right time? Why do you want to start it? Secondly, strategy before you get started, and think about who it's for, what's your objective, what are you actually trying to achieve, what does success look like for you, how's it going to fit in with your work and lifestyle, where does it sit in your business infrastructure, if at all, and really thinking about, planning for that. and then of course beginning to design it in terms of artwork and name and so on, right? So any other questions so far? And I'll just scroll through as well to see if there's something I missed in terms of, I know you said the tech, mistakes to avoid. I'm sure I can come up with some more mistakes to avoid as well. Scripting versus talking, I will pick up on that, Valentina. So again, the first few episodes I did, the way I did it was I had the blog already, and I actually basically either had an existing blog post that I'd written, or I had actually written out pretty much word for word what I'd speak. So I had it in front of me. You can probably tell, in fact, I got feedback from a lovely listener who told me I'd improved over time, which I guess is only natural. At the beginning, I was more or less reading. And of course, it wasn't video, so you couldn't tell. So the advantage, if you do audio only, is that I can sit like this, stand as well. A lot of people recommend that you stand when you record. And I can read without you really noticing. I would embellish a little bit and so on, but probably they felt a little bit formal. But again, have a listen and let me know what you think. Over time, what I've done is actually shifted it. So I guess partly because I've become more comfortable, partly because I have less time with a little toddler, and partly it just feels more natural. When I have a topic, I'll quickly, today I had some tech issues, unfortunately, so I wasn't able to record, but in theory, I was going to record. I had the topic, a couple of bullets just to think through, okay, these are the topics I want to cover. And then, to be honest, I speak more or less freely. Since I've now started doing video as well, it feels like I want to be more like I'm doing now in a live session. So I'll be sitting with the podcast, the microphone and the earphones, and I'll be looking, and I don't really want to be looking down at my notes a lot. So I'm now speaking much more freely. Again, it depends on your natural sort of confidence, how comfortable you are with speaking freely. I'd probably recommend at least some bullets. If you're doing it, of course, with a co-presenter, you want to make sure you've aligned. To be honest, even before the specific episode topic, you guys really need to get together on your strategy. How will you make sure that you're sort of getting equal airtime? Are you going to do some very formal, I'm going to talk this, then you talk that structure? Is it going to be more informal banter? If you know each other really well, that could work very well. If you don't, then, how's that going to work? So really talk those things through. You don't want to be talking over each other. Speaking of how long it takes, you don't want to be sort of causing lots of editorial problems to edit out and so on further down the line. So really think about that as well. But I definitely recommend, if you can, speaking more or less freely with some bullets. I like the conversational approach. To be honest, the podcasts I listen to that are literally just reading, unless they're reading from a book or something. In fact, next week I am reading from my book, ironically, to celebrate the anniversary of the book launch. But if it's just reading, it doesn't really feel very engaging to me. It's almost like an audible audiobook. So my preference is to speak quite freely. But again, I started speaking much more sort of formally at the beginning. So that's something to think about. So Valentina, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the time. So it's really a combination of how much content you want to fit into the episode, I guess, in terms of how long it should be, what you can commit to. Again, many short, consistent episodes, I think, is much better, I think personally, than doing like a 1 hour extravaganza and then not doing it for another 3 months. And think about your audience. So if you're thinking, again, as I said, I've got busy parents, entrepreneurs, side hustlers, corporate professionals on the commute. For me, 15, 20 minutes feels like about the right length that I can sort of focus on. That is the kind of slot I have if I've gone to clean up the living room, or if I'm going for a bit of a walk or whatever. That feels quite manageable. If it's a longer topic, I'm looking at maybe converting some of my workshops into podcast episodes. They might be then a one-off sort of 1 hour episode, maybe. We'll see how that goes. And you can experiment with shorter ones. I was mentioning some podcasts that do 5-minute sessions. I think a one-off 5-minute thing isn't long enough to really help you get to know who I am and get my credibility and expertise. And I can't then talk you through the why this is important, what you need to do, how do you do it, and so on. But again, try mixing it up now and then. Maybe it's just, I'm looking already into sort of December. What am I doing? Maybe the final week of the year doesn't need to be a 15, half an hour episode, because you guys are all going to be off having a Christmas and New Year's with your friends. So it might just be a, hey, just checking in to say Merry Christmas. Thanks so much for listening and have a wonderful New Year. So you can always mix it up as well. So we want to launch a podcast where we discuss no non-fiction business or leadership or finance books, give a summary of the key message and a review from our perspective. Okay, yes, thank you. Sorry, I should have read that before I answered the previous question. But again, it depends on the context, right? So what I would do, of course, again, walking through the steps for you specifically in terms of strategy, in terms of planning the episodes, you presumably have certain books that you want to talk about, right? So maybe choose 5, 10 that you want to start with that you've already read. Try to take a couple of them and sort of how long, is that summary of the key message going to be? If there's a couple of you speaking, you're going to have an opinion each, and then you'll talk about that. So, and in fact, also, of course, look at some other podcasts. I can think of a few that do that similar kind of model. So we can have a look at, how long are they usually? I think possibly 30 to 45 minutes. It might be a bit longer for that. But again, there are some more bite-sized ones. So again, Valentina, remind me if I don't, but I will send you a couple that I listen to just to give you an idea. But you want it to be, it's how long is a piece of string, as they say. You want it to be short enough to be engaging, to be manageable for your busy audience, but also long enough to be meaningful. There's no point in just having, although I'm sure that exists too, a 5-minute, hey, this is the book, this is the insight, I think it's good, buy it. That could be one option. For you, I think you're looking to do more of an intellectual approach. And also because you're looking to establish yourself as an expert in this area, you want to make sure that that's coming across. So that's something to consider as well. Okay, great. So I'm going to get into tools. Elena was saying, want to talk about feminism, and there's no such podcast in Russian, which is great. So obviously doing in a particular language can be great. I've got Santiago in the Business Accelerator, started a YouTube channel in Spanish for Spanish speakers because he does beautiful carpentry and woodwork, I believe it's called, and there weren't any channels to help him do that in Spanish, so he started his own. So if you're lucky enough to speak a niche language, there might well be fewer listeners overall, but it means that you have then a very specific niche where you're going to be able to speak. And I know, Elena, at least when we spoke last, your audience for your coaching was going to be sort of, I think, aligned to that complementary. So that's obviously ideal to have that then Russian language podcast as well. Okay, perfect. Anything else? How much time? So yes, let's get into the process. So the process, of course, is, okay, we've got the strategy and the planning. So that takes time in itself. If, like me, it's a part of your business content calendar, then to be honest, the podcast doesn't require extra planning for me. I have, as I said, my themes. I have a new topic every week, and then the podcast just slots into that. So that makes it easier if you have already that content calendar, which I'd definitely recommend that you have, and that I'd help you out with as well if that's something you're missing. So having the strategy, the themes really helps as a first step. Then you want to record it. Then it needs to be edited, and then it needs to be published and then promoted, right? So it's really those steps to go through. So I might have to look down at my notes now because I should know what I use. I'm going to share what I use, and I'm happy to share some insights if you have specific questions. It's not my expertise, but I have done quite a lot of due diligence research for my own sake, so I can certainly do my best. But again, there's lots of Facebook groups I can recommend that have experts and people with different opinions. For the recording, I have a Mac. So if you have a Mac, there's Audacity. Audacity for Mac, it's free software. There are always these debates in Facebook groups on is it good enough and so on. But to be honest, for most of us, it's good enough both to record and edit, to be honest. And for me, it's literally open it up, make sure that it's got the right, and we'll talk about the mic. I guess we should talk about the microphone in a moment. I've got this. Ta-da! Hello. So I put that on. I hit record. I literally don't do any kind of, I don't interview other people, first of all. I don't want to necessarily remove, coughs and ums and ahs and filler words and so on. So you also need to establish what your editing parameters are. But I literally go straight in. Hello there, welcome back to the Reimagining Success podcast. This week we're talking about the 2-year book anniversary, Finished talking. I have some kind of natural sense for talking 15-20 minutes every time because each time it's more or less the time I want to do it. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Boom. Right. So I have that recording. That's all I do for editing. For recording. In terms of microphones, I have this one, and I can link all these tools in there. So just let me know if that would be useful. it's called I guess it's Danish, Rode, R-O-D-E with a line through the O, podcasting microphone. I've got this shock absorbing, I'm not even sure what it's called, shock absorber, let's call it. And then there's this boom stand. And all this, although actually when I hit the table, it does shake a bit, so it's not quite working. I must be doing something wrong. But in theory, that means then it's sturdy, really high quality sound. You can also get a pop filter that stops your p and your t and so on sounds, but tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's an issue in terms of my recording. But those are the main elements I have. I chose, as many of us probably will do, to go for a more expensive option, high quality, knowing that I was in this for the long run, and I thought I might as well start with good quality from the beginning. I want it to be credible and so on. Lots of people start just with earphones like this. I also have, and I should have got it out, I probably can't find it right now, but a little travel microphone that I've used a few times during lockdown and so on. I wasn't always here, ironically, using my full setup. So I had a little Samsung Go, I think it's called, podcasting microphone that, to be honest, I can't tell the difference with the audio quality there either. Using these headphones, I believe, as well. But that's my recommendation. There are lots of other microphones. For me, that was the investment I wanted to make. But again, lots of people start out with much more basic microphones. Arguably, the audio quality for a podcast is pretty important. So if you are going to spend money, I think that might be where you want to do it. But of course, it depends on your budget and your expectations and so on. Generally, they say record in a smaller room with soundproofing, whatever. Obviously, I'm just in here, so again, I think the quality is pretty good. I got someone, in fact, who's following me and on my email community who used to work for BBC Broadcasting. So hello, if you're watching or listening. And she said she really admired the quality and it was really professional and so on. So I'm happy to hear that, which of course comes from both the recording and then the editing as well. So microphone, Audacity for Mac is the software I use, and that's it for the recording. Now, I've started doing video, by the way, if anyone wants to do video. I didn't do it from the beginning because I obviously didn't want to have to put makeup and I don't even have a lot on now, but, style myself. And of course, again, it means that you have to put on a bit more of a show and so on. It can be an interesting channel, but again, when you're starting out, not necessarily the priority. If you're interviewing someone else, you need to look at some different tools. So you might want to use Zoom to record the interview. You want to make sure maybe that, and if you're in the same room, in fact, again, COVID notwithstanding, there are ways to have microphones where the sound comes in from two places, or you have a microphone each. You need to think about those things as well. So that's something I don't do personally. But certainly if you're remote recording with somebody, Zoom or even Skype, something like that can get you the recording, and then you just need to play around with it, obviously, and make sure maybe you're recording on both sides so that you have the backup, have the audio track to be cleaned up and so on. So any questions on recording? I guess that's the most basic thing, right? So you've got all your strategy. Ideally, you batch record, if you can, if your voice can manage it, do a few episodes in one go. It's better for you. You get it done. You're in the zone. You'll be able to say, hey, last week we talked about this. Next week we talked about that. It'll all flow. And then when you give it to your editor, if you have an editor, you can also batch edit, or if you're doing it yourself. Now, editing. I know several of you asked how long, in fact, do you spend editing an episode? And this comes up again and again in different Facebook groups. Honestly, I'm shocked at the time people say it's sort of 8 to 10 hours for the whole process, I guess, which is probably the reason why I have tried doing it, but I've given up. So the process I myself have gone through is that again, one of the biggest blockers, I think, to starting a podcast is the tech. Same for me. So I was so put off by the tools and, oh my gosh, what software should I use and how do I edit, that I decided, hey, this was 2018. One of my goals for 2018 was to launch the podcast. It was coming up to December. I thought, I've got to do it. I found a podcast editing agency, and I'm happy to share that link as well. They're based in the UK and the US. Definitely recommend them. Jonathan, absolutely great. He did my intros and outros back then. He did my episodes, and I would sort of give him, I guess I gave him 3 or 4 each time, and he'd do that month. And yeah, I think it was 4 episodes. I paid a particular amount. There are also, you can pay more, in fact, for them to do this whole process. So if you have lots of money, if you just want someone to, if you're, what's it called, money rich and time poor, you just want something to do everything for you, an agency like that can also do all the setup for you and so on. In fact, he got me set up on the publishing site Libsyn, which I'll talk about in a moment, and so on, right? So he did all the setup as well. I'll need to look back at what that cost, but it was, I thought, worth it to take it off my hands. Over time, it did feel like a bit of an investment, and I was very lucky to have a good friend who is an audio what's the word, guru, I guess, I don't know. He's very kindly offered to help me out with this. He's now pretty much automated the editing for my episodes, and he's doing that as a benefit for myself, as just a free service, which is incredible. However, I certainly won't want to trespass on his time for much longer, and I think there is a point at which I'll need to go for another solution. But he is incredible. He does such a good job, and I'm very lucky to have a friend who does that for me. I did in the interim try a couple of different things. So my plan was, and my coach at the time recommended having someone on the team doing it. Adobe Audition. Oh, hello, Anita. Great to see you, and Teresa as well. Adobe Audition is something that you can pay for. It's a great tool, again, to record and edit. I watched lots of training on how to edit it. And to be honest, I did the thing. I adjusted the sounds. I did my best. I thought it was okay. Again, sent it to my friend, and that's why I certainly didn't ask him to do my editing for me. But he listened to my attempt and wasn't too impressed. And he said, "Oh, I can do this easily with the software I have." So that's why that came about. For me, I wasn't, the quality wasn't good enough. And because I'd had the professional quality up until then, I just decided I don't have the time. I can't teach someone else, certainly. And it would be too expensive, to have that software as well. So for me, that wasn't an option to do it myself. But again, lots of people do it themselves. And if you have a very simple, like myself too, you just have one single voice, not much editing to be done, it actually becomes very artificial if you take out every R and filler word and so on. So I'd recommend to keep it quite natural. And maybe like myself, you can do that you get someone professional to do the setup, intros, outros, and then you can very easily, and that's what my intention was from the beginning, very easy, just plug and play, pluck the intro in there, outro, episode, boom, done, right? And a few adjusted presets. I'm sure somebody can do that for you too. So those are some of the options. But again, it can take a very, very long time to do that. Yes, exactly, Anita. So you just do, certainly on Zoom. Skype I use for my, as you well know, for my video interviews that I do on the blog. Zoom, I think, is probably better generally. You can strip out the audio, you can get the video and do it remote with someone when you're interviewing them and so on. So that works. I can't remember if I said it now. I use ScreenFlow now. It's something that I have for Mac that I use for webinars and things. I just tested it for my videos, and actually that works quite well, both to record myself doing the podcast episode, but then also I've discovered I can very easily now sync the perfectly edited audio with the video. So that, ScreenFlow is an option. I believe it's not free, but it was a manageable cost, and I have that anyway for some other things I do. So in terms of frequency of new episodes, again, it depends on what you can commit to, who your audience is, what your content is. I think if I'm going to, make up a frequency, I would say weekly. For me, knowing that, my podcast comes out every Thursday morning, if I know that my coach's episodes came out every Monday, it's coming out. Let me think. I like to listen to Friday night comedy. The episode comes out obviously every Friday night. So if I'm in bed late enough on a Friday, I can listen to that before bed or the next morning. I think Desert Island Discs come out every Sunday. So knowing, I think a weekly routine is quite good. Someone said they were doing every 10 days, and that just felt a bit sort of random, I suppose. So I think certainly a regular, consistent frequency. Maybe it works to do it once a month. I don't know. Probably not more often than once a week, right? Because that would be a massive commitment for you. But again, if you can batch record, batch edit, then, by all means, actually there won't be so much extra work once you've done it all. Again, I'm trying to do my best now to batch record. I've done till end of November, I think I've done. So I've actually done my 3 months worth, which I'm quite proud of. So Sandra, thanks so much for sharing that. So Sandra's saying that using the Anchor app, editing is really easy. So, everyone will have their favorites. And again, have a go. If you're time rich and money poor, then probably editing for yourself will be worthwhile too. And again, if you don't have the business up and running yet, I obviously already had an established business. So for me, paying for that is worth the extra quality. But certainly don't let that become a barrier. You don't want all this tech to be sort of a blocker for you. So let's see. So Audacity, and by the way, Audacity, again, free for Mac, is something you can also use to edit. So that's fine. And then hosting. So lots of options, I'm sure, but Libsyn, Libsyn, is the most known one. It's, I want to say, $15 a month or something. You've got different tiers, and I keep shaking the table, so apologies for the camera shaking. again, I had the agency set it all up in the system to make sure it was right. And now Cara on my team submits the podcast episode every week. Title, upload the audio, obviously, show notes. And the amazing thing is once you've linked it out, it will submit to, every time. I think Amazon Music is the latest one that's come out, and going to Alexa, obviously. So I've got Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Music, Google Play, all those, right? So we literally upload it to one place, Libsyn, and that'll push it out to all the different channels. And that's it. So that's literally, it's not hard once you've submitted it first time to Apple and so on. It's in the categories. Again, the submission process to Apple and so on can take some time. I see this in the groups all the time. Oh, I've submitted it. When is it going to be published and so on? Mine took, I think, a couple of days and then it was approved. So hopefully if your content is non-controversial and it's all streamlined, it should be fine. So that's editing. And then finally, promoting. Now, this is something I certainly need to get better at, and I have been doing more actively the last few weeks, and I've really noticed a shift in downloads and subscribers. So putting more effort in can really make a difference. But literally just recording it and putting it out there, you're probably not going to get a lot of listeners, right? So there are different things you can do. If you follow me, you'll know I have my weekly email every Friday. So I send out, obviously, hey, this is the latest podcast episode. Some people send out an email on the day of the podcast episode, and that's their email. My podcast comes out on Thursday. So I now have an audiogram, if you know what they are. If not, check out my Instagram or my LinkedIn. It's a little graphic. We've taken a little snippet of the audio. There's a little sort of audio wave, whatever it's called. If you can, also captioned. That'll go out. Instagram stories, I put that on LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. You can do a lot more. And if the podcast is the main part of your business, obviously re-promoting old episodes. I will, as again, many of you will know, I share podcast episodes with prospects, with clients, because I now have a library of almost 100 episodes. So if Teresa comes to me and says, hey, I'm looking to build my personal brand, I was like, oh, I did a series on personal branding in February. Here are 8 episodes you can listen to. Or I'm trying to do a business review. Well, you can listen to this one about the business plan, right? So it's really also, you can actively use it behind the scenes. And again, as I started saying at the beginning, you don't need a gazillion downloads and subscribers in order to have this be an important part of your business. Again, lots of Facebook groups, people are saying, oh my gosh, I've got this many downloads in this many weeks. Is that good? Is that bad? I get it. We're all obsessed with metrics. To be honest, I rarely check the numbers. And no, my numbers are not incredibly impressive anyway, so probably I'd be disappointed if I saw them. But the key is it's a part of my strategy. It's growing. And as I said, now that I'm doing a bit more promotion, I can see really incrementally it's growing a lot more. And I'm hoping to learn, and that'll become a bigger part. But in the meantime, I again and again have people come to me saying like, oh, I've listened to your podcast. I love it. And, I'd like to work with you potentially. Again, coming back to what I said at the beginning as well, if you guest on other people's podcasts, the great thing is I can speak on Anita's podcast. At the end, they go, so where can we find you? So, well, if you like podcasts, come and listen to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. And these are podcast listeners in your ideal audience who are going to come on over to listen to you as well. So social media posts, guesting on other podcasts, obviously direct listeners back. So I have a video that goes out every Monday. I've started off in saying, hey, for more on this, listen to the full episode on Thursday. And of course, ratings and reviews. And again, I'm not so good. So if you do listen to my podcast, I would love to ask you for a rating and review on your local podcast app. That would be really helpful. I think it's mainly Apple which does it. Unfortunately, some of the others don't even have reviews. That really helps, obviously, other people to find it. Helps you rank better as well, which is ultimately just helping you get more. I was going to say eyeballs, but I guess it's more ears, more listeners for you. So Anita's saying, for an interview style podcast, I guess, let's see. Does anyone, and Sandra, you said you've started with an interview, so can you maybe jump in there and share with Anita how much time you say? Anita, I know you're a researcher, so you might spend a lot of time on the research. I would definitely limit that time to make sure that it doesn't overflow. So, we fill the time we have, so give yourself a limit. Absolutely. I mean, again, like I say, my recording takes pretty much the 15-20 minutes the episode does. Now with a video, I do have to have a bit more setup, but generally I just sit down, record, boom. I haven't talked about transcriptions, right? I use rev.com for all my transcriptions, rev.com. So after I've done it, I upload that. I then get a transcript. It's great for SEO. I think Sandra was asking for SEO before. I have a website a web page for the podcast, and I have the full transcript there. I don't have time to edit that, so it's certainly not perfect. But it does mean that, you know, from a search optimization perspective, and if people do want to read, and also accessibility, by the way, really, really important, they then have the transcript available. Editing, again, Anissa, I can't say. A lot of people say it takes a lot longer. If I was doing my own editing, I certainly wouldn't spend 2 hours on it. I'd spend much less time. But you know, it's up to you for the quality you want and the time you have available. And then again, publish it to Libsyn takes 5 minutes. Promoting it, however, will take much longer. So I would have a think about, you know, if that's, because that's, you already got like, you know, 5-6 hours for podcasts, is quite a lot to be adding onto your plate. So really think through, you know, how much time can you dedicate to this, and how much time do you want to dedicate to this? So we're coming to the end of what I had to share. I think I picked up on most of the questions, but in the last few minutes, as we recap, maybe do let me know any other questions, anything I've said, anything I haven't said, would be really helpful. I know it's, you know, it's a big topic, and I might have been off-putting in terms of saying how long this takes. You know, it takes such a long time to, well, it doesn't take that long to get set up, but certainly to have, you know, that the momentum build over time, to have that audience to grow. It's taken me 2 years to get to where I am now, but again, I've barely noticed it. It's now such a part of my routine. I love it. I love talking to you guys. As I said, as it turns out, I can speak quite freely without too much prep before, and I'm sure you guys will get into that sort of natural frame of mind as well. If you're chatting with a friend or someone else, you might get into that really lovely flow and banter that will work really well as well. Social sort of, back and forth conversation is really good. I mean, again, listen to podcasts that you really enjoy, right? I like Building a Story Brand. And what's he called? Don Miller, I think. He does a little intro with one of his colleagues who's a comedian. And I just love their banter at the beginning. It's 5-10 minutes of them chatting. Then it's an interview, and then they come back and chat again. That's another format. You can have pre-recorded the interview, do a bit of an intro, outro. There's a guy called Adam Buxton who I was introduced to recently. Comic / philosopher / thinker. I don't know what he is. He literally does a funny little intro where he's rambling with his dog in the fields of Norfolk. Talks about sort of what he's up to and so on, maybe what's happening in the world, and then again he does an interview that's sort of slotted in there, and he comes back for an outro. There is no right or wrong way to do it. In fact, if you come up with a fun way to do it, then by all means do that. Valentina, I don't have off the top of my head, but I know there are equivalents, so definitely I can. I mean, Adobe Audition is obviously one that you download to any to a PC as well. And I'm sure there are free tools as well for PC. So I don't know if any of you guys, the rest of you, know of any tools, but I'll definitely put some links for you guys as well. So all the things I've been mentioning, so you can find those as well for, excuse me, non-Mac users as well. So absolutely. So again, yeah, take a step back. Let's go right back to the beginning. Should you be launching a podcast? I love podcasting. An amazing medium. It's growing. It's a fantastic way to build credibility, to reach more people, to speak to interesting people, to have that creative outlet. You know, it's definitely where the future is, and start sooner rather than later, because it takes a long time. However, make sure that you have the time to dedicate to it, to show up consistently and be able to promote it. You don't want it to become a drag, another thing on your to-do list that you then don't enjoy. So experiment with going on other people's podcasts. Try it out with your co-speaker, co-interviewer, co-presenter, I guess, and listen to and go into these Facebook groups and so on. Again, I can recommend, and see what people are saying and just get a feel for it. Get clear on your strategy. Who am I talking to? Look, again, don't let this become a blocker. Start, don't procrastinate, just go for it. But do some of the due diligence of thinking, this is what I'm trying to achieve. If your goal is to get people into your programs and so on, then you know, let's say I want to push my business incubator. I know that that's a particular corporate professional who has XYZ characteristics, and they need to know the answers to ABC questions. I'll make sure that I do topics on those questions. I guess one mistake in terms of having, what was I going to say? Oh, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought because I read a comment that came in. Well, we'll never know what that mistake was, will we? So there you go. That's what can happen when you're spontaneous with your thoughts. I'm not sure what the mistake could be. Yes, Valentina, I'm going to give you the book review podcasts. I can link to the others that I've said. But again, listen to others that you like and see the format. I know people, I mean, my boyfriend's always saying, oh, I like the interview ones. It's so boring to have solo. Okay. But again, for me, it works to have solo. I'm the expert. I'm speaking to you on a topic from my lifestyle. It means that I can speak free and I don't have to sort of organize all these interviews and so on. I would love to speak to incredible people about how they've reimagined success, and I hope that will still come. For now, I don't have that as a possibility. So Anita says she's been interviewed on Anchor. Any other questions? So again, I was going through the recap. So why do you want to start? Should you even start one at all? Strategy. Then begin to think of, really get concrete about, okay, title, artwork, description, category, and so on. And excuse me, I'm getting to the end of my voice after all the recordings I've done today. Think about the episodes. You probably want to have a few episodes that go out right away at the beginning. So maybe a little trailer intro, maybe 1, 2, 3. Again, introducing the topic. Or in fact, I mean, I know, again, my coach, her first episode was with John Lee Dumas, I want to say, but some massive, so you could go with your best content, boom, episode 1. So I just did, hey, why should we redefine success? Why is this so important? In the case of Valentina, maybe since you're reviewing books, you also want to probably contact those people, by the way, whose books you're recommending and reviewing. Certainly if it's a favorable review, tell them, hey, we reviewed your book, share it on social media, tag them on Instagram, send them an email, let them know. And hey, they might just respond, they might just share, and you'll get a massive boost, right? So people love to be mentioned. I mentioned Denise Duffield Thomas's Chillpreneur on my Instagram. She didn't share it to her stories, but she did reply and say, thanks so much for sharing. So there are clever things you can do there as well. And then think through, again, join some of these groups. And, I'm certainly not a tech expert, but I know that you all want to know about the tools and they are important. But I hope tonight's session has encouraged you to take a step back and, yes, think about the tech by all means, but don't let that get in the way of the strategy and so on, right? So get started. I'm not sure about background music throughout the podcast, Sandra. I've not seen anyone, or rather heard, I guess, do that. I would think it's maybe distracting. By the way, with music, I should also say, of course, that you need to make sure you have the rights. So I have, either you pay for that or you have royalty-free music or whatever, but make sure you do that. You can't, obviously, just like on video or whatever, you can't just take people's music and play it. I think from copyright perspective, it's fine to read from books and so on. Obviously, you're saying that it's coming from that book and so on. A pleasure, Teresa. I hope it was useful. I hope I answered your questions. Any other questions coming in as well? And again, I think I've mentioned a few times, but the key is consistency. You want to be showing up regularly. So if it is once a week, just commit to that. Do it once a week. If you can't do it once a week, once a fortnight, that's fine too. Start low maybe, and then you can do more. Again, I had someone, in fact, I want to say it was my previous business coach again. She did an episode every 3 days or so at the beginning. Some people do a month of like a daily episode just to get lots of content under their belt out. And then you can get into sort of a slower frequency. But think about what works for you. If you know me at all, you know that I'm all about defining success for you, for your lifestyle, for your business. So really start with what works for you. Think about your audience, yes, but think about what's going to work for you. And I promise I don't have COVID, but I think I am coming to the end of my voice. So I might need to wrap it up there. Excuse me. But I will try to send you all the links. If you've been watching the replay as well, do comment, tag me, and I can answer as if it was live as well tomorrow morning. Yes, exactly, Anthony, absolutely. Obviously, the music I got had, I forget now if it was royalty free or at least that I bought the rights. There are certainly cheaper versions you can go for. And I'm going to have to stop, I think, before I cough and splutter my way through. And in any case, we've gone a little bit over. I enjoyed that session. I hope, it wasn't too much information at you. Again, I don't want to overwhelm you. I do want to emphasize that it is a big commitment. So really think it through before you come, before you commit to it, I guess, and before you decide on this over so many other business priorities. But again, it's such a fun thing to do. Creative outlet, get to speak to incredible people. We'll give you plenty of content to be able to share with prospects, clients. Who knows what opportunities will come. Again, as much as I say it should be part of your business strategy and so on, if you're redirecting, which I think a few of you are, if you're pivoting your business, it can be a great way to, hey, in the meantime, I'm doing this work over here, but I am now steering that ship in this new direction, so that gradually you'll become more known for this new thing, making connections there, and over time your business can align with that guiding star as well. Such a pleasure. If anyone of you wants to share a bit more, I know some of you did at the beginning, your specific ideas, if anything came up that feels more individual to you, obviously let me know and we can have a call. I'm certainly not a podcasting coach, but hopefully I've been able to share my experience and how that fits, most importantly from my perspective, into your business strategy and your broader sort of definition of success as well. So thanks so much for your wonderful questions, and I can't wait to listen to your amazing podcast. So of course, when you do launch them, do let us know. Sandra, if you have published yours already, then do share it so we can have a listen as well. But above all, yeah, enjoy, get started. If you're clear on why you want to do it, you're ready, you're committed, find out, the tools, whatever, that'll work itself out. The audio might not be perfect, that's fine, just get started. And by the way, I'm sure you can always go back and re-edit things later on. If you suddenly have a booming business, you have lots of money and it goes really well, your podcast, you can always go back and re-edit some episodes, so not to worry at all. But most people you will attract the audience that is right for you, so don't put too much pressure on yourself. Again, consistency over time is going to be key, so show up, put it out there, and you will enjoy it, I'm sure, and have a wonderful time podcasting and entering into this world. I certainly have no regrets, and I've loved and am really grateful, I guess, that I started when I did. So happy podcasting, looking forward to hearing all your wonderful podcast episodes, and I'll see you soon for another workshop. Let me know if you have more specific questions, and good luck. Bye for now.